Hello. In today's episode, we will tell about the world's tallest serial killer who has murdered his own mother and grandparents. Edmund Kemper had an IQ of 136, was 2 meters 5 centimeters tall, and weighed 150 kilograms. He was born in Burbank, California in 1948. Like many serial killers, he had a troubled childhood. His father, Edward Jr., and his mother, Clarnell, started living separately when Edmund was 9 years old and divorced 4 years later, after which Edmund was sent to Montana to live with his mother. As a child, Edmund was continuously verbally abused by his sisters and his mom, who wouldn't even let him stay in a room with his sisters because she thought Edmund was strange, despite being sensitive about her kids. Clarnell did not show the same care and sensitivity to Edmund, and showed no understanding of him. Edmund was a difficult child. He couldn't make friends at school because he was afraid of being ridiculed and hurt by other children. He became increasingly violent towards animals. He even started decomposing his sister's dolls and enjoyed the process very much. Because of these, his mother put more pressure on Edmund, eventually leading him to his decision to run away from home and start living with his father. His father was living in Los Angeles with his new wife, but soon Edmund started making troubles in his new home as well. His father could no longer tolerate him and sent Edmund to his parents, who lived in North Fork, a small town in the foothills of Sierra Nevada that was mostly inhabited by elderly people. Edmund enrolled in a high school. He was a quiet boy and was getting taller and bigger every day. He would be almost unnoticeable at school had he not been so big. His grandparents also found Edmund strange but could tolerate him. His grandfather gave Edmund a .22 caliber rifle and a hunting dog to keep him busy. Now he spent his time out of school hunting, including shooting at animals that were forbidden to hunt. This made his grandfather angry with Edmund. Edmund went back to his mother for the summer vacation, but returned to the farm in 2 weeks. Edmund disliked his grandparents. He found his grandmother was old and nagging, and his grandfather annoying. Edmund has started contemplating over how shooting his grandmother with a rifle would make him feel. With the onset of this thought, the tension in the house began to increase even more. His grandmother was worried about him, and even had her husband's .45 caliber gun. Sensing this lack of trust, Edmund went furious. When his grandfather went to town for shopping, his grandmother was reading a book at home. When she looked up, she saw Edmund looking at her in a strange and frightening way. The old woman could not stand it and told him, "Enough, Edmund. Don't look at me like that." Edmund called his hunting dog with a whistle and told his grandmother he would be going hunting with his rifle. When he came out of the kitchen door, his grandmother was still sitting at the table. He pointed the rifle at her and fired 1 shot, after which she collapsed on the table. Then he fired 2 more shots, and she died on the spot. A little later, his grandfather returned from shopping, and as he was taking out things from the back of the car, Edmund came up to him from behind and fired 1 shot in the head of his grandfather, who also died on the spot. Edmund killed his grandfather and grandmother in cold-blooded manner and then phoned his mother because he panicked that he would be jailed. His mother told him to call the police. After listening calmly, Edmund called the police and told the situation from the beginning till the end. Edmund was taken to the police station and confessed everything. Edmund said he killed his grandmother because he wondered what it would feel like killing someone. He killed his grandfather so the latter would not see his wife in that condition and have a heart attack. Edmund was sent to a correctional institution because he was under the age of 18 when he appeared in court. The psychiatrist, who was sent to examine him, diagnosed him with paranoia and psychotic disorder. He was sent to an asylum. In the asylum, he passed many tests and did whatever the doctors told him to do. He was a very compliant child, so the doctors thought that he was on the road to recovery, but in fact he was not. Edmund befriended rapists who were in the asylum with him. He was listening to their fantasies and looking forward to the day he would leave that institution and implement those fantasies. He convinced the doctors that he was cured and was released in 1964 on the grounds of rehabilitation. By that time, he had grown taller, reaching the height of 2 meters 5 centimeters and 150 kilograms. He had become a giant. It was 1968 when Edmund left the asylum. He decided to become a policeman because that would enable him apply violence in a legal way. But his height made him unfit to become a policeman. Doctors decided that he should be enrolled in a school and monitored remotely. When Edmund exhibited compliant behavior there, his sentence was lifted completely. The court decided to send him to his family. He was sent to his mother, who had moved to Santa Cruz, California. She had remarried and divorced again. She didn't like anything his son did and kept criticizing him. There was constantly a fight in the house. Edmund would usually go to jury room bar that was frequently visited by police. He would chat with policemen and act as if he was one of them. The cops loved him very much. Edmund found a job at the State Highways Department, left his mother, and moved to his own house. He bought a second-hand car. After work, Edmund drove around in his car like a policeman, picking up hitchhiking girls he saw on the road and taking them to their destination. At this stage, he was testing how the girls would trust him. He had filled the car trunk with handcuffs, knives, blankets, and plastic bags. He worked as a kind of taxi driver until he felt ready to commit a crime. In 1972, two university students named Mary and Anita got into his car. This time he was not going to take the girls to their desired destination. He drove his car to a secluded place, and when he took out his knife, the girls were terrified. He locked Anita in the trunk and tried to strangle Mary with the plastic bag he put on her head after handcuffing her. While struggling for her life, Mary was able to make a hole in the bag and tried to hold on to life, but she couldn't get rid of Edmund. The giant got angry, took his knife, and stabbed the girl to death. Then he went to the girl, who was shaking in fear in the trunk, and stabbed her to death. When he got home, he started cutting them into pieces after separating their heads from their bodies. He put their bodies in separate bags and buried them in different places in the empty land. After hiding their heads at home for a while, he threw them into a valley. Mary's head was found in August, but Anita's was never found. His first murder had given him much courage, and now he started contemplating over his new methods. It was very difficult to disarm his victim with a knife while driving a car. For this reason, he bought a handgun. In 1972, he killed 2 more girls. This brutal murderer was only attracted to dead girls. Meanwhile, his mom Clarnell continued to criticize and humiliate him, unaware that her son was a murderer. During the Easter holidays, Edmund started plotting to kill his mother. He went to his mom's room in the morning with a hammer and a knife and hit the sleeping woman's head with a hammer. She died on the spot. He separated her head from her body with a knife. He also cut his mother's vocal cords and took them from her throat and threw them into the grinder in the kitchen so that they would be thoroughly disintegrated. Later, he would explain to the police why he did this. She yelled at me all these years. She had to be silenced. After killing his mother, he went out and walked around for a while. In order to prevent the police from suspecting him, he came up with an idea. He invited his mother's close friend Sarah to their place. He believed that if there were 2 dead bodies, police would not suspect him. Sarah was shocked upon arriving in her friend's place. There was blood everywhere. Before she could even do anything, Edmund jumped on her and strangled her to death. In the morning, he got on Sarah's car and drove to Colorado. On the way, he stopped at a mechanic and left the car there. He rented another car that he drove for 18 hours without a break. He was tired and exhausted. He stopped in the town of Pueblo in Colorado. Then he went to a phone booth and called the Santa Cruz police station. He talked to one of the police officers he knew and confessed to the 8 murders he had committed so far, from the beginning to the end. When the police officers came to pick him up from the place he described, he was sitting on a bench. In Santa Cruz police station, Edmund described in details all the murders he had committed, including where he had buried the bodies. Since he described everything in details, the defense attorney was unable to do anything except plead insanity. However, it was proven that he was not insane, but an obsessed killer. After 3 weeks of court proceedings, the jury found this giant murder with an impressive IQ guilty of all the murders in the first degree. The court sentenced Edmund to life imprisonment and sent him to the high-security prison. Edmund was captured and has been in prison since 1973. He became a more docile person during the prison period. It was as if the brutal killer was replaced with a more childish person. Edmund was very talkative. In the 1980s, the FBI created a department for combating serial killer cases. They would consult Edmund to learn about his ideas, thoughts, and tactics in order to understand the psychology of other serial killers and catch them.